but at that time those who were interested in tendering were a bit apprehensive because of the National Grid issue. We didn't know when we were going to be looking to start the job, and so what we did, we brought the tendering process to a natural end. Now we've moved forward with National Grid. At least we are moving in the right direction. It's up to the council now to decide that we revisit the tender as per our tendering policy, and that involves placing a BKN item. It means the website, it means a paper advertisement, and probably no sport. So it's basically as before, as we did it before, but we start with a whole new process with new dates. Some of those who indicated an interest previously have asked to be kept informed, so they can be sent tendering pack. Nothing wrong with doing that. We can send them a tendering pack. They've requested it effectively. We've got one or two others that have indicated an interest. So it just remains for us now to send out the tendering packs for anybody who wishes to tender. And if they respond to the paper advert, BKN, the website, or the notice boards, they will be added to the tendering process and given a cut-off date.
Anina?
Do we yet have a timescale from National Grid as to when all of their works will be completed and building work will be able to commence?
It'll be this autumn. So it will be before pre-Christmas.
John?
Can I get an update on the quantity surveyor, where we are with that process?
He's got the documents. I haven't heard anything from him.
Okay, and second question then to that is, I thought that was key to where we were with this project, the quantity surveyor providing information.
The quantity survey was additional information that we were asking for to give us more background in terms of costings. But obviously, if we get to the point of having the tenders, then we'll have that same information will come through direct from tenderers. I don't think it's necessarily something that we would have to hold the process up for. It'll feed into our understanding of those tenders as they come, and if he gets it back sooner, then that's fine.
As long as we have the information before the tenders come back in for the cut-off date, then that's fine.
And then John.
Trying to get a bit of clarity on this, I do think it's right that once we get the waiver agreement signed, National Grid give us their timetable.
Yes.
I think that's the next step. And really, the waiver agreement is very important because it's to do with the safety of that corner in particular. That's why it's important to do, and I missed that in my thinking about it. So it is important to get this done anyway. I think what we need to do is button down National Grid precisely when they're going to start and finish, and then Owen can accurately present us with a timetable of when the adverts will be placed, at what stage tenders will be asked to be submitted by, and we'll get an indication also. They will be able to give us an indication when they submit their tender, probably if we ask them, of their anticipated commencement or build time should they be successful. So in other words, we get some clarity there. And so yes, we've got to go down this process of tendering, but I don't think we should start it now until National Grid have given us those times. That's my gut feeling. But
which they may do well before the next meeting, of course. In which case, is that the timescale that you're agreeing that we should? In other words, if they came back to us, say, in a week's time and said, we're coming in the first week in November to do your work, is that a trigger?
Yes, and it's going to take, and it will be completed because they'll know. I mean, they'll trench this lot within a couple of days, probably.
I may be wrong, but the way I'm reading what you're saying is that in effect we would defer starting the tender process until that has happened and that has then been reported back?
No, you could start the tender process once the work has started,
Right.
Yeah.
or at
Understood.
least a few weeks before their anticipated start. Because if they're not going to start until November, say, October, you need to go out, you need to advertise, that's going to take 3 or 4 weeks. You need to give them time to tender, that's going to take a month to 6 weeks. So it can be run in conjunction for when they start their work, or when they tell you, so you can anticipate that time scale. It seems that we shouldn't start the process until we know the times, but I'll be guided by everybody else. That's my...
And if it suddenly moved forward, there would be no reason why we couldn't call an interim meeting to start things. John?
I'd echo those thoughts. To me, there are 2 clear things that people don't have the facts. One is when the work starts, to be able to quote, and then secondly, the quantity surveyor information, which absolutely has been fed back to us. Those 2 things have been critical from the first tendering process that's failed. So I echo Councillor Townsend's comments that we can't really start without those 2 very clear bits of information.
I don't think the quantity surveyor's information has any bearing on the way we go forward. It is merely a reference for us, providing us with more clarity. It won't stop the tender process, it won't stop National Grid. This is for our benefit, and it could well be for our tenderers' benefit. I don't know what information you'll give us, but I don't see it stopping the tender process.
Melina and then John?
Will there be a definite end date to this tender process this time? Because last time it kind of came to when it should have ended, and then it just kind of ran on again without there being any defined end.
Well, if you look at
I was asking the chairman, sorry.
But if you look at the chronology, everything, we'd started the tender process, and then all of a sudden we had the problem with National Grid. And Owen quite rightly said, until I'm not sure where we're going with National Grid, therefore I'll give you extra time because we're not quite sure. So he was quite right to do that, but if we're going down a proper tender process, then we will have a time to start and a time to finish. As simple as that. It could be decided by you. A month or 6 weeks is generally about right.
Just to add it, I disagree with the thoughts on the quantity surveyor. As a parish council, we instructed somebody in this village to do the work for free.
Oh, then I'll ask him not to do it then.
Comment, please. I mean, an offer
I'm just trying to throw my input into the situation here. Is that appropriate? I'm stopped halfway. So, as a parish council, we have instructed someone for free, which I will add is very generous of the person giving the time. My understanding, having done building bridge myself, that it is quite a task. You're talking about days of work. If it's done correctly, it's days of work, and that person should be recognised for putting that across. So it's not a recognition of somebody doing a favour or something for free. But as a parish council, we have put that in the process. We don't know a timescale or a bit of information for when that's going to come through. And there absolutely are 2 key things: the time of the works for the National Grid, and I would counter-argue that this is critical, the quantity surveyor, the costings, to allow our tenderers to fully give detail and give a really keen and competitive price, are absolutely critical to this project.
Thank you. Any other comments from members?
Mr. Chairman, I just disagree with that summation.
Okay. And in terms of the quantity surveyor, obviously it was an offer that was made to us by the quantity surveyor. We haven't approached someone and said, you will do this for free, and the offer was made that they would do this. So, but as I say, I'm trying to pick up where we are, and my reading of it is, I think we are not in a position then to set the tender process going this evening. We work forward with the information that's going to come back to Owen, and then as soon as we've got information that we believe enables us to go forward, we will then be back to members, and that might be at a full meeting, it might be that we would introduce an interim meeting, because it's a major item to deal with anyway. So are members happy then that we proceed on that basis at the moment? We will await the information to come in, and then we will keep you informed as to how that information is coming. Okay, and that sort of feeds into the... Yes, those in favour of that, please show. That's unanimous. Okay, so that covers the discussion we've had on the timescales for the grid. Mobile signage at the shop was, I believe... This was raised by David Sturgis, who asked me to ask the council whether they could put a swing board on the piece of ground, the verge between the car park and the road, next to the flagpole. And I spoke to Aileen Fletcher at Highways, and her comment was that providing it doesn't impede in any way the visual display of vehicles, she has no issue with it. So, in other words, bounce it back to the parish council for us to have a look at where they're going to site it.
We looked at it, didn't we? It was a really nice sign, it's very tastefully done, and then we positioned it in several different ways. And
when you say we, that was the shop.
That was, sorry, yes, when we had and we put it in several different places, went across the road, up the road, down the road, to make sure that there was a place it could go that wouldn't impact on the visibility coming in and out. And we all thought that it was a nice, tasteful sign. It was of benefit to everybody, really.
Okay.
And I can certainly confirm it certainly did not affect the visual display at all from the car park.
Okay. Can I have a recommendation then, David?
That we allow them to put the sign up, and if we have any issues, we can revisit the matter.
Okay. Any other comments? Melina?
Has any consideration been given to it falling over, or
it's heavily weighted.
Yeah, I
don't know about kids, but I got the impression they were going to take it in and out, but I'm not.
We did a lot of testing.
But they have a lot of old people that work there that can't even bring their access ramp in and out.
Well, we did a lot of testing with it, and we're convinced that it wouldn't tip over.
Okay.
Because there's a lot down by the Ford garage that are laying down flat.
Okay. So, if there's no further comments, we've had a recommendation that we do give them permission, as David commented, that we will keep that under review in case there is anything that crops up. We can always remove that permission if it becomes a problem. Those in favour of that, please show. And any against, please show. And any abstentions? So that's carried by majority. Okay, that then brings us on to the next item, which I think, Melina, you raised, which was the churchyard maintenance funding.
Yes. I'm just wondering why the parish council is still paying for it and why the church don't pay to maintain their own churchyard.
I mean, it's something that I think the parish council historically has done on the basis that it's been felt that it is part of the village, and therefore it has an impact on the village amenity, in the same way that we maintain the Fox and Goose splay and we do the verges through the village. It's on the basis that if it were not done, it would have a negative impact on the setting of the village, and that was the reason why I think we felt it's appropriate for the parish to do it. Melina?
Did the church not pay to do? I'm not proposing that the churchyard isn't maintained. I'm proposing that the church paid for it because they're richer than the parish council.
I think it depends on which. I think, to be honest, it depends on which part of the church.
The Church of England, most definitely are.
It depends on which part of the England you're talking about. If you're talking about the Church of England nationally, then yes, they do have a lot of assets. The problem is they don't pay for stuff locally. It's the local parish church and the diocese that end up responsible for what happens in the local village. But
can I just explain all the? And I'm actually, funny enough, I'm actually a member of the PCC in North Curry actually, but the Croker Church Council. What happens is the diocese and the Church of England are a completely separate entity to a parish church. A parish church has to raise their own funds, and in fact they have to pay a substantial amount of money to the diocese. each year for the clergy. So they don't have any reserve funds at all, unless somebody donates to them. The only money they get that's additional is increased giving by their congregation or their electoral roll, and that's the only income they get apart from legacies. This is why the parish churches are in a very poor state over them, because they don't get the money from the diocese or the Church of England. And that's the reason for it. Our church is actually quite poor. Parish churches are quite poor. Diocese is quite rich. The Church of England is quite rich because it's got a lot of property. But you know, that's the issue here is the local situation. The parish church does not have the funds, basically, to be able to pay those.
Who got the money from the sale of the field? Did that go to
No,
the church?
that went to the diocese.
So when all the properties around, you'll see around Brent Knoll, East Brent, Lymsham, there are various old rectories, old vicarages. When any of those get sold, the parish itself doesn't benefit at all. It goes to the diocese and the national. Yes.
But one of the other important things, Maria, we actually appoint the contractor. We don't pay the church to do it. In other words, we, as a parish council, take it under our contract to do it.
Yes, yes.
We're not giving the church
No, I
£3 grand a year
understand
to go and
that.
do it.
No,
Okay?
I
That's
understand
the important thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. You're happy that you've had the explanation anyway?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Next item was village contract, which I think David you raised at the last meeting.
Yeah, there's been, over the last few years, there's been numerous things raised about the verges, the churchyard, and it needs a bit of tweaking to a point. Certain things get done, certain things don't get done. Yeah, I think it needs looking at in a bit more detail.
Do you want to give an update as to where we are with
Yeah,
the contract?
But the contract, you've got all my details came through. We had a 3-year contract agreement with Jason, which actually runs to 2026. In fact, runs to March 2026. But within that agreement, there is a review each November. So every November we can look at that contract and make sure it's still fit for purpose. In other words, it's doing what we expected it to do when we went for the agreement originally. And we're approaching that November review in a couple of months' time. So now would be a good time, I guess, to have a look at the contract and see whether there are things that we need to do differently.
I'd like to propose that, having reviewed this and gone over bits and pieces of it, that the working group, which is Bob, Owen, David and myself, get together, go through the contract, go through the different areas, have a complete overhaul of what needs to be done to make the contract more workable, and that we then come back to the October meeting with our after a fact-finding mission, if you like, and then that would put us in line with the November review for us to revisit it when we've got some stuff on paper. And I'd like to propose that that's what we do.
Okay.
I'll second that. I think it's an important thing to do. Yeah.
And obviously, as with any working group, it will be to make suggestions and recommendations. It will be for this council to make any decisions. All those in favour that we progress on that basis? That's unanimous. Thank you. Then the PCC request for identification of churchyard area. So basically that one, I think again has been circulated a draft plan. So as you remember, it was raised at a previous meeting that there had been some contention in the village about areas that had been roped off in the churchyard and were being, some areas are being used for more wildlife friendly maintenance and others were the normal maintenance. Obviously it's Jason who ends up doing it, and we needed to make sure that we understood what was being asked of him. A suggestion has been made as to what could be done. A plan has been sent to us. As yet, that has not been agreed by the PCC. They will be meeting later this month, so it will come back to the parish when we have the review of the contract as well. But the suggestion is that there will be certain designated areas which will be more wildlife friendly, so they'll be left sort of the top end of the churchyard, allowed. It's better for butterflies, it's better for flowers, all those sort of things. And there are set areas that will then be, everyone will know, not only the parish and the parish Parochial Church Council, but also residents, because again, when residents go up and see areas that are unkempt, they think Jason isn't doing his job, when in fact he's deliberately left those because he's been asked to leave those. So I think we'll try and make it a lot clearer as to what is being done. But as I say, at the moment it is going before the PCC, the Parochial Church Council, for them to decide that they're happy with the suggested plan which has come from one of their members. That will then come back to us to make sure that we're happy that that's what would then become part of the contract that Jason
That'll tie
does.
in with our review then.
Exactly.
Because we'll be doing less maintenance in these areas, so
Yes.
we'll have to be looking
And I think at that point, once
Precisely.
we've done the contract review and had this confirmed, we can have a meeting with Jason.
Yeah,
And so he's very clear about what is required.
So again, what was on there tonight is there for information so you know what's being talked about, but no decision for us to make tonight because it's not even got to that stage yet. Okay. Play equipment updates and grant applications. Update on that at the moment is we've gone back and we've looked. Owen has made an application for Sport England.
Sport England, yeah.
So there is a grant application in there. We have looked at a couple of other bodies. One was whatever the new name is, Veritas, for what was Viridor. The only issue with them is they could not make a decision until well into the new year, their next timescale. So we can't go with them because, again, one of their rules is you cannot place an order before you've been given the funding by them. So that one unfortunately we can't take forward. We've also contacted ASDA, which we're in discussion with because they do some community grants, but whether or not it's appropriate they're coming back to us on. But we are certainly in for a grant application, and again, before we make any placings of orders for certain, we will be coming back to you so that you know what the financial position is as we discussed last
To
meeting.
the trust fund as well. We've gone back to the trust fund that we had a grant from for the disabled roundabout last year. Now they've looked at it again and said because we are not specific about disabled, they will make a grant, but it will be a lesser level than it would have been previously. So they've offered us two and a half, I think nearly 2,500 as a grant, which again they're happy for it to be used on proposed project.
Okay. John.
Chair, can I just go on a separate note on the sport facilities? I've spent some time there over the summer, and one of the things I picked up on here is we should certainly speak to our parishioners, including children that use the park. Chatting to them and coming down and playing football here myself, several of them have mentioned to me that we have one goal on the mugger for playing football here, and it doesn't really work. And there's several reasons why it doesn't work. Is that you've got grass and astro. The grass has been pointed out by Councillor Townsend, obviously varying lengths, and then the difference. So if you're trying to play a game of football, which is why we've got that there, it doesn't really work. And also we've only got one goal. So chatting to the kids, I kind of said, well, what do you suggest? And they referenced several play parks, including Lymsham, that have movable goals, very cheap. So a goal with just a couple of wheels and you can move it in and out, put it in place. And with your permission, I'll just raise a proposal that we just explore the costs at this stage, and it's just feedback from the children that use the park. I've been down Lymsham, I've seen it down there, and absolutely you can just, if you're going down to play football at Lymsham, you really go out, play a bit of football, you can move around the park depending who's there. And it just seems a really obvious and very cheap addition to our park, which throughout the summer is used by lots of children who love playing sports, including football.
But our members happy that we sort of investigate what the costs are, and also I guess we need to look at what storage would be required at certain times of the year as well.
Yeah.
But yes, if you'd like to come back with some information, then we'll certainly have a look and see what
Thank you very much.
works.
Thank you.
Okay. LCN. I think you circulated minutes from the
Yes, I think I did circulate minutes from the LCN. That was the first LCN actually, wasn't it, which I sent minutes from.
Yeah.
Local community networks, these have been set up as part of the new Somerset Council structure to give parish councils a bit more say in some of the things that are going on, and indeed to vote on things should they be relevant to parish councils, or the town councils actually. And so they are requiring or requesting that each council has a representative on those LCNs, because that person would then have a vote on any issues that arise during that discussion. or whatever it may be. And at the moment we don't have that representative. So,
Any nominations?
I'd like to propose Colin Townsend.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. Having done it once before, yes, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, certainly LCN is very similar to what, it's an upgraded version of what was the old cluster group, which I think you attended.
so second for
We don't,
no, we don't need
No,
a
second.
second.
if there's no other nominations, then those in favour that Colin was our nomination, please show. Any against? Any abstentions? That's carried by majority. Okay.
Thank you.
That's all right. I was thinking, don't thank us yet, you don't know what you're going to be dropped in. Next item, flower boxes, I think. Came up.
Yes, when I did the eulogy for former councillor John Harper, I made reference to various things that he had done for the village because he took enormous pride in his village. And I must admit, I did forget to mention the actual signs themselves that enter into the village, which is a big mistake. But also, he wanted the flower boxes put by the village signs. Now, Amanda very kindly looks after the one on the A38, and I have recently put some stuff on the other signs, just some tubs with some flowers in, just to remember John. But those boxes really do need, either we're going to use them or we're going to let them go. And if we're going to use them, the question to us all is how are we going to use them? Who's going to do it? Amanda, I know, is very, very busy and does the main one on her own behalf. But is it better that we just have a big tub there if we want to? We buy some tubs and we just put wallflowers in there leave them dormant during the winter and give some nice spring, summer flowers in them. But I wouldn't want to see them left because it's really in memory of Councillor John Harper. And I think we owe it to him to maintain them.
Yeah.
The Burton Row one is a big problem because there are suckers from the hedge, like dams and sloes and that, coming up in the middle of it, and cooch, and it is a nightmare. I believe ages ago the guides said they'd take it on, but that's never happened. The main problem, and the reason why I can't look after the other two, is getting water for them and in the summer. And when we had that big drought back along, I just went down and I had to take everything out of that one, bring it all home, put it in water baths and try and revive it. I can't physically water all of it, which is why I can't manage them. Aid was going to look after the Ham Road one, but I'm not sure where we are with that. And I said the guides said I believe the guides were going to look after the Burton Road one.
The guides certainly looked at doing that. They came to the conclusion though that they probably can't because of its location so close to the bend. They're not sure that having the girls on doing that, it's...
And it's getting water to them, which is a big problem. Unfortunately, when John did it originally, of course we did the first one, that one there, and then he said, right, we're going to do those two, but don't worry, I'll water them. So of course he did start at one point taking water down there, or he and I were taking water down there, and I said I can't physically get water to all three, and and especially when it's hot and it's twice a day, it's like difficult.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, in terms of, obviously we need to find out from Aid whether he is up for doing Ham Road. And then whether if members can have a think on what we do with Burton Row. Where is it?
Where
It's
the
on the-
sign is, right
Where the sign
just
Yeah,
past the turn of the West Road.
So it's the border between us and East Brent, just as you go around there.
Yeah, the problem is, like I said, there's loads
Yes,
of rubbish
yeah,
going
that's the
through
trouble.
it,
Yeah.
which what I used to do is go down and just cut it all down and try and just make it, look decent, but it grows like
Wildfire.
yes, and you just can't keep on top of it.
No.
Was that, did you want, or was
No,
it
that's
fly?
a little.
That's okay, I wasn't sure.
There's
That's
also,
okay.
There's also the problem, Mr. Chairman, of the costs of putting the flowers in these tubs. I don't know what the answer is. We did have an offer from the garden centre at one stage, didn't we?
Well, I think John pushed them, if I'm honest, because when I went down there and asked them, they very reluctantly gave us some, but I actually pay for what goes in there, and sometimes I get one or two people, they probably won't make me mention their names, but they will say, oh, we would like to donate some plants. But we do get it when it's really hot and everything, somebody dies, or I tried last year, I bought a load of bark, put on it. This year what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, what's in there now, when that goes over, I'm going to take everything out, replace it with some new topsoil and some more compost, and then put bulbs in, which I always do in the autumn, and then this spring we've got bulbs in there, and that's fine. It's and yes, like Colin said, it is cost, but I manage that one, but that's okay. But it is somebody either taking them on or
Navigating the BK and asking for anybody in Burton Row who would like to, because it might be somebody, it might be a property nearby who's happy to do the watering, and
somebody might be happy to
it
take
doesn't have to be a councillor, does it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, there is a lady who's taking on Crooked Lane. It looks stunning now, and she
Yes.
lives there, and she's done it all herself.
Crooked Lane.
As you go
Oh,
down.
yes, down the side of her fence.
She's done the
Yeah,
whole
it's
fence,
lovely.
and now she's done where the sign says
That's
Crooked
lovely.
Lane.
Yeah.
She's done that all
Oh,
herself.
has she?
Yeah.
Ah,
Wow.
yes,
So-
somebody might
yeah.
be
Yeah.
happy
So
to.
are members happy that we do that? Because again, we might be in the terms of the cost, we might be able to get one or two of the local businesses to sponsor. If it's going to look nice,
Yeah.
they might, a bit like the roundabouts we were talking about earlier, but
Yes.
there might be people prepared to do that to help us keep the village looking nice.
Yeah, and there might be a group of people, say, in Burton Row, which are
Yeah.
happy to
Yeah.
take one.
Yeah.
I've got a name in the BK and Joe, if you like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's
but
just we're trying.
And ask Aid,
Yes.
about the Ham Road one. I said, I'm happy to do that one up there. That's fine. It's the Burton Row one, which is,
Yeah.
and I think that when you cleared it, Colin, that was the worst, that was a nightmare, wasn't it, when you went to clear
Yeah,
it?
it took us a bit of time to clear, but
Yeah.
it's better now.
Yeah, oh yeah, no, it is very clear.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
The next one is the plaque on the knoll, which I know was reported to us, and I know Owen raised it with the stonemasons. Have we heard anything back from them?
I haven't. No, is it still there? Do you know? Has anybody seen it?
I haven't been up.
Because they told me they were coming
since-
fairly soon to take it away, but
The last photo.
I'll go up tomorrow and have a look.
Yeah, so the last I saw of it, one of the pieces, there was 3 pieces originally, there's now 2 pieces. The small piece appears to have disappeared. But it's, it's beyond repair. It would need to, if we're looking to, I think we're looking at having to replace. And it's a question of if we replace, how we do it in such a way that makes it more difficult to damage and such. Because it looks, it's a very deliberate act to have
Oh yeah.
done that. That
Yeah,
wasn't an
somebody,
accident.
and there's no brick there. In fact, I don't think a brick would break granite. You'd have to have a hammer. But if the plaque could be covered on the front with a thick sheet of perspex or then that would make it doubly hard to break.
I'm not sure who was first, John or Melina. Melina, do you want to go first?
Could the stonemason carve directly into the main rock rather than putting a plaque on the rock?
It's quite a lot.
Yeah,
There's quite a lot because what the plaque does, it draws together all the inscriptions that have faded on the other rocks, stones that we've got up there, and so there's a whole sheet of inscription, and it would get lost in the detail of the stone. So that's why we said at the time we'll put a plaque on the plain face of the stone that, and as it says, what does it say? The words were, forgive me.
It's
Fine.
cool, is what the carving is called.
I did take a picture of it. What it does, it brings together all the inscriptions.
And it also meant that we weren't technically changing any of the historic stuff that was there. We were just adding on the blank face, which was why it was done the way it was at the time.
Yeah.
And again, I think if we spoke to the stonemasons, if we put something in front of it, I wonder whether they would also put almost like a buffer behind it, because I think part of the problem was that the very flat stone was off an uneven stone, so it had room for it to bend in when you hit it hard enough. But it's just a real shame, because it's obviously, as I say, a very deliberate act.
I'm sorry, I can't find the original photo.
If you carry on looking for that, I'll let John come.
I sent the pictures a couple of weeks ago. So, just conscious that it's likely to happen again. I think that's with what's happened out there. We need to be conscious of how much money and repeat business we keep with it. So, echo the vandalism part of it, but nothing is fail safe.
I think certainly if we talk to the stone, because the stonemasons got to go up there anyway, because it was attached with special security bolts that they can get off, which others aren't supposed to be able to. So if they get it off, we'll then have a word with them and come back before any decision is made, obviously in terms of what the cost would be to redo it, but also what measures and what those measures would cost and how successful they think they would be. I think it's a shame, if, bearing in mind the stone's been up there for a very, very long time, why it should be now that people feel the need to try and damage it, but it is a shame. Any other comment?
No, I can't find it. I'm sorry. I'm searching for it. I can't find it. No.
Okay. So in the meantime, our members have we continue with talk to the stonemasons, and we'll come back with quotes and estimates for readdressing it. Okay. Emails. Owen.
Yeah, one of the things we discussed at the Clerks Forum was dedicated emails for all councillors, and I spoke to my IT expert, as he's been for many, many years, and he said to me that the obvious thing is a Gmail account. The Gmail account does seem to serve the purpose, and it was relatively easy to set up by members, and it would also mean that we have one generic Gmail account for